madalas napakinggan natin o madalas nababasa din natin sa mga pagpapatutuo ng mga taong nagbabalik loob sa Diyos o yung kung gaano o kung paano binago ang kanilang buhay at ang kanilang pananaw sa buhay gawa ng kanilang pananampalataya kay Kristo. Tulad na lang ng isang kwento ng isang African convert who was walking through the jungles together with a missionary. Sabi ng African convert, "Now these jungles," he said, "are very dark. And most of my life, I have walked through them in fear of demons." Dahil yun ang sinasabi nila, naririnig ko na kwento, may mga diablo, mga demonyo dito, madilim, masukal. But I no longer walk in fear now on these paths. After his conversion, he said, there may be demons or there may not be demons, but I am Christ's, and that is enough. I am Christ's. Kay Kristo ako. At yan ay sapat na. In this Sunday's Gospel reading, sisters and brothers, Mark tells us more about Jesus by showing His power over unclean spirits, over demons. The ironic twist is that it was the demon that recognized Jesus as the Holy One of God, while the people who were in the crowd had no idea who He was. Now, this reversal raises an interesting question. If we met Jesus on the street today, would we recognize Him as the Holy One of God? Would you recognize Jesus? What do you want from Jesus? What do you want Jesus to do for you? We must realize that these are self-centered questions. No? Would you recognize what do you want Jesus? What do you want from Jesus? What do you want Jesus to do for you? These are selfish and self-centered questions. These questions reflect the consumer mentality that permeates our society, which begins with the question, what's in it for me? Anong makukuha ko dun? Anong kabutihan ang maibibigay nun sa akin? It's quite self-centered and selfish. Such question can be formulated and be twisted in different ways. Let us remember, Christianity, by comparison, begins with the question, what does God want? What does God want? Jesus came to reveal God's will for us. Jesus came to show everyone, to show us what God has done for us. Jesus came to answer the question, what does God want for us and from us? This is the question that should define us bilang mga Kristiyano. Notice in the Gospel how Jesus quickly silenced the demons at about the time they started to identify Jesus as the Son of God. You would think that Jesus would have welcomed such an identification of his power, of his authority. Yet, when seen in light of Mark's entire gospel, we discover that Jesus did not want to become known as a Mr. Fixer. He did not want people to find room in their hearts for him only because they thought he was a miracle worker. He did not want people to follow him only because they thought he could be called upon simply to put bandage on the wounds of life. Ayaw ni Jesus ng ganon, na maniniwala at susunod ang mga tao sa kanya dahil siya ang makatutugon ng kanilang gutom ng anumanong pangangailangan nila. We need to be clear that Jesus' purpose was to free men, women, and children, to free us to enter into a new relationship with God. To persons whose lives were cluttered by everyday cares, he proclaimed that all people are created, all people are fashioned in God's image, and are the jewel of God's creation. To persons who were struggling with life's trials, he proclaimed that God's love is the anchor that will allow them to stand against the dangers both from within and from without. In short, sisters and brothers, Jesus proclaims a relationship with God that pushes back our darkness. Jesus proclaims a relationship with God that pushes back all our secret fears. It is a relationship that frees us to walk boldly, to walk freely, knowing that every single day of our journey through life is worth the effort, in spite of all dangers, in spite of all the fears that often paralyze us. We are Christ's, and that is enough. That is the good news for us today. That is the good news we must proclaim. And so, let this Eucharistic celebration be an expression of our belief and faith that God's love for us is so great that life's demons and dangers never have the last word. Rather than talking about what we expect from God, Jesus is telling us about what God wants from us, what God wants from you, that is a relationship with God that is based on trust. Jesus wants us to let go and let God be God in our life.